Hello, back in Edinburgh. Now, there's a lot of literary tradition going on in Edinburgh, a lot of authors and all, so I decided to do a sort of tour of that. And so for today, I'm going to be going through the Old Town. It's sort of southern part of the main city. Going to be starting off the Royal Mile, coming around, going up the Royal Mile, because a lot of stuff's along there. Go down this way a little bit. Then tomorrow I'm going to be going into Newtown and going sort of up in this area. And so let's get started. So we're on Regent Street now. This is just 2 streets north of the Royal Mile. This is the Robert Burns Monument. Burns is probably the most famous Scottish poet around. Let's see. There are no statues of Burns in Edinburgh. There's one in Leith, which is sort of a suburb of Edinburgh. It's just northeast of here on the coast. What can we say about this? There are a lot of other statues of him throughout the world, though. Let's see. Other than Queen Victoria and Christopher Columbus, he has the more statues than any non-religious figure in history. 15 statues of him in Scotland, 14 in the United States, 7 in Canada, 7 in Australia, 1 in Paris, probably some more other places. What else do we know about him? Robert Burns Day is generally celebrated around January 25th in the United Kingdom. It's celebrated in other parts of the world too. That's how famous the guy is. He's probably most famous for Auld Lang Syne. He stayed, we're at the memorial here. He stayed for a time just northwest of here, just north of the Waverley Station in St. James Square. That's one of the 5 places he stayed. Another place was Baxter Square, which Baxter closed, which no longer exists. Another was Butulis Street, which we're not going to get to. And then 2 other places, which we are going to go nearby. That's it for Robert Burns for now. His name's going to pop up a few more times during this. Okay, so I'm going to cut through the New Calton burial ground. Old cemetery here. Nothing literary about it, just updating here. What we're going to do is we're going to circle around to the east end of the Royal Mile. Most of what we're going to see is going to be in little side streets off the Royal Mile, so I'm just going to go my way east to west, and I'm going to be running back and forth across the street and going down these little side streets and seeing what's going on around them. And so that's it for now. So this is Crichton Square, just south of the Royal Mile, the Scottish Poetry Library. So back in 2011, they had some book statues just sort of popping up around Edinburgh, 10 of them. They were done by an anonymous artist. Most of them, or about half of them, were there's actually a picture of them in the gift shop window there. About 4 of them were gifted to the library here. 2 more are on loan currently, and like I said, no one knows who did them. Not sure where the rest of them are, but I'm gonna go inside. I'm gonna take a few pictures of those. There's gonna be no commentary on them because I'm describing what they are now. It's a library. I don't want to talk in there if I don't have to. So here we've got a statue of Robert Ferguson. Was a poet in the mid-1700s. Only lived to age 24, but wrote 50 poems in English and 33 in a Scottish language. He is buried somewhere here in the Canongate Kirkyard. I'm not going to go there. He died a pauper, but Robert Burns paid for a tombstone for him later on. So this is the courtyard of the city council building. What they did, they started the Edinburgh Awards, city chambers. Started the awards back in early 2000s. And so this is for the Edinburgh Awards. It honors people who have made a contribution to Edinburgh or to the society. So we got some handprints. We got Alexander McCall Smith. He wrote the 44 Scotland Street series. They're sort of a satire. Yeah, I've never read them, but from what I hear, they're sort of a satire, sort of humorous stories. Longest running serial novel. We got some more down here, but there's a tourist standing on them, so I'm going to wait a little bit, wait for people to move, and we can see what's going on down here. Yes, he was, 2020 was when he was done. Who else do we got? We got... 2007, we got Sir Ian Rankin. He wrote the Detective Inspector Rebus series. And then 2008, J.K. Rowling was honored. And she, of course, wrote the Harry Potter series. Okay, so speaking of J.K. Rowling, there are going to be several J.K. Rowling tours you can take in Edinburgh. There used to be 2 Harry Potter-based stores, which are no longer around. But there are several Harry Potter themed things going through. They lean heavily towards the Harry Potter. They sell a lot of Harry Potter stuff, obviously. Out here on the Royal Mile, just sort of outside of the courtyard, you may recognize this from Infinity Wars, or Avengers Infinity Wars. So this area is where Vision and Scarlet Witch were attacked by Thanos' thugs. Threw them about 2 blocks south of here into Waverley Station, and that's where that fight ended. So Bank Street, we have Deacon Brodie's Tavern. Deacon Brodie lived in the latter part of the 1700s. He was sort of a, actually his name was William Brodie. They called him Deacon Brodie. He was the Deacon of White, that's why they called him that. Deacon Brodie Close is down there somewhere along that area. So he had nothing to do with writing, but he was a upper middle class person, really well liked in society, except at night he was a sort of leader of a bunch of thieves, and so he was eventually arrested and executed for that. I only bring him up because most people consider him to be the inspiration for Robert Louis Stevenson's Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. And so I've actually eaten here at Deacon Brodie's Tavern before. The food's okay. Okay, so this is Ladies Stair Close. We just came down here from, this is just north of the Royal Mile. It comes to the Writers Museum. This is Macker's Court. Writers Museum is dedicated to Sir Walter Scott, Robert Burns, and Robert Louis Stevenson. Gonna go inside and look at some of the displays. Not gonna talk as I do it just because there are people in there.
Dr. Livesey, the rest of these gentlemen, they asked me to write down the whole particulars of that treasure map, beginning to the end, keeping nothing back to the bearings of the island, and that only because there's still treasure not yet left. There are two great views of Edinburgh. How much you said the possibility of the house known as the Basis. There was a school in the late Miss McGregor's college.
Yeah, so Scott was a poet laureate, famous, and then he's also known for his novels, which he wrote under a pen name just because he was poet laureate. He didn't want people thinking he was, cheap for writing what was basically romance novels at the time. Robert Burns, Sir Walter Scott, and Robert Louis Stevenson. Like I said, there are a lot of statues of Robert Burns. Not to mention portraits. And a plaster cast of his skull. His writing desk. This is the Scottish War Poets Corner. At the west end of the Royal Mile, we of course reach Edinburgh Castle. So two Americans were somewhat inspired by this. One was George R.R. Martin, Game of Thrones. Supposedly a lot of his plot lines come from Scottish history and some of the things which happened in the castle. You can take Game of Thrones tours, basically bus tours leading out of Edinburgh into the countryside, and they do some talking. And there was at one point a Game of Thrones store in Edinburgh, but it's closed down, but you can still find a lot of Game of Thrones themed stuff. And then Jim Butcher, the Dresden Vials, the Hidden Halls of the White Council of Wizards is located in sort of a parallel dimension space underneath the Castle Rock, basically. It's not actually in the castle, it's in the Castle Rock. Why you put it there, I don't know. It was never explained. It was just a good place to put a hidden wizards place, I guess. So this is just another view of the castle. You get a better idea of how big Castle Rock actually is. And yeah, you can understand sort of why Jim Butcher chose it for the location. So here we have the White Hart Tavern on Grassmarket. Basically, Robert Burns had a flat in here at one point in time. So I am approaching the Vinyl Steps. Basically, according to one website I saw, they were renamed recently the Miss Jean Brodin Steps after a character. The Prime of Jean Brodin was a novel written by Muriel Sparks, I believe it was, and made into a film in 1969. And so in 2018, which was the 100th year anniversary of the author's birthday, they supposedly renamed the steps the Miss Jean Brodin Steps. But I just walked the whole length of it. I can't find any reference to that, any signs. All the signs still say the Vinyl Steps. So I don't know if this is just something they haven't put a new plaque up yet or not. I'm just going to... Here are the steps. I was just walking down Vinyl Street. And like I said, I walked one way up here and couldn't find any reference to the name being changed. I'm going back and seeing if I can't find a sign somewhere at the bottom again that I might have missed. So basically this is just southwest of the Grassmarket where I was just at, where we saw the White Hart Inn. So I saw no sign that the stairs had been changed. It is possible that it was a different step altogether and that the site I saw had it completely wrong. I have no way of knowing that. So this is Greyfriars Kirkyard. If you take a ghost tour of Scotland, or Edinburgh, it'll probably stop here. Also, if you take a Harry Potter tour, it'll probably stop here, because supposedly J.K. Rowling got the name of several of her characters from some of the tombstones around here. On Forest Road, just south of the Greyfriars, we have Sandy Bells. Basically, the man named Hamish Henderson did a lot of... He was a poet and collector of Scottish folk songs. They've got some information about him in there, because basically they're a music bar. And other than that, like I said, this Forest Road connects to George IV Bridge. That'll take you back to the Royal Mile. So we are one street south of the Royal Mile. We're pretty much due south of St. Giles Cathedral, looking at the Scott Monument, built in 1846 to commemorate Sir Walter Scott. About 200 feet tall. Going to get a closer shot later. Down here is Waverley Bridge. Right next to it is Waverley Station. Again, here we are closer to the Scott Monument. You can actually go inside, go to the top. Towards the top it gets very narrow. You get a nice view of the city, but again, you gotta sort of contend with other tourists and stuff. This here is Princess Street. We're pretty much going to go down till we get to Castle Street and then pop up north of there. Castle Street, as you would expect, is somewhat north of the castle. I believe this is Princess Park. So I'm on Rose Street now, and they got this sort of mural sculpture type thing of the Beachcomber. It's a poem by Scottish poet, I believe it's David McKay Brown. Could be wrong on the name there. Actually, his name is up here on the plaque. And it just basically goes through the days of the week and tells the things that a beachcomber found. Here we go. George McKay Brown. I was wrong on the name there. And so we got this going. And I can squeeze through here. So Rose Street ran between Castle and North Castle. This is North Castle. Sir Walter Scott lived here at one time. Then also we have Badger & Co. It's a restaurant which is located in the former houses of Kenneth Graham. He wrote The Wind in the Willows. So we got some Wind in the Willows varied stuff. I'm gonna check out inside, see what it looks like in there maybe. I'm not sure if I'm gonna film it or not, just because people will be eating and all. They don't want to necessarily want me to be filming things, but this is what it looks like. Here we are inside. Not a lot of people in here, so they allowed me to take some film. So it's a nice looking place. Again, illustrations of badgers and foxes and stuff. So we're on Yonge Street, a little further north of Rose Street and the Badger & Co. This is the Oxford Bar. Basically a character, Detective Rebus from Sir Ian's books, who I mentioned earlier. This is his hangout, so fictional character who hangs out in a regular bar. So popping further north onto Harriet Row. If you go east, you'll arrive at 17 Harriet Row. This was, or is, or was at one time known as the Stevenson House. Robert Louis Stevenson grew up here. They moved here when he was about 6 years old. According to the internet, it's run like a bed and breakfast, but it doesn't. I don't see any signs or anything advertising it, so I'm not going to try to get inside it. Going to start heading back south to Queen Street, and we're nearly done. So we come down Queen Street until it turns into York Place and continues down. And if you look north of here, if you were to go 2 or 3 blocks, which street dead end, you'd have to do some zigzagging. You'll eventually find Scotland Street, which again, the series 44 Scotland Street by, last name was Smith. What was his full name? Alexander McCall Smith wrote that series. Not going to go looking for it because that's more of a residential area, and they probably don't want someone walking around or waving the camera around. So Scotland Street does exist. There is no number 44 to it though. So looking for the actual apartment would be useless anyway. And we're going to continue on down York Place until we get to our last stop. We come down York Place and we reach the Conan Doyle pub. Supposedly, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle lived in this neighborhood. Like Bram Stoker, he was actually Irish, but most of their publications were done in Britain, so they're sort of considered British authors. Like I said, supposedly he lived in this neighborhood for a while too, because he did live in, I believe he went to college here, studied medicine here, and then sort of settled for a while while he wrote. So that's it. I'm actually going to pop inside, see if anyone there knows actually where he lived. And so this might be my last video, or I might add more if I actually find out where he lived.